Imagine driving down a quiet highway when you see something completely unexpected. A toddler wandering alone along the side of the road. You call 911, desperate to help, but moments later, you vanish without a trace. That's exactly what happened on July 13, 2023, when 25-year-old nursing student Carlee Russell called the police to report a child on Interstate 459 in Hoover, Alabama. Her scream was the last sound her family heard before the line went silent, and the search for Carlee ignited a nationwide firestorm. Over the next 49 hours, a massive search unfolded. Family, friends, police, and an entire community working tirelessly to bring her home. But the truth behind Carlee's disappearance was far more shocking than anyone could have anticipated. What began as a desperate plea for help would become one of the most baffling and controversial cases in recent memory. What really happened to Carlee Russell? Welcome to our channel. Please encourage us by subscribing to our channel now as we continue this heartbreaking true crime story. Carlee Russell was a 25-year-old nursing student from Hoover, Alabama. Described by friends and family as bright, compassionate, and driven, Carlee had big dreams and a supportive community behind her. She came from a close-knit family, one that deeply valued connection and safety. To those who knew her, Carlee was someone with a promising future, eager to make a difference in the lives of others through her work in healthcare. But on the night of July 13, 2023, Carlee's world, and the world of those who loved her, changed forever. The details of her disappearance were as shocking as they were bizarre. A lone toddler wandering a busy interstate. A panicked 911 call. Then, silence. Within hours, her disappearance sparked a nationwide frenzy. Social media lit up with hashtags, local search efforts mobilized, and a community clung to hope. How could a young woman vanish so suddenly and without a trace? This was more than just a missing person case. It was a story that captivated the country. But as the search for answers unfolded, the truth behind her vanishing would leave everyone stunned. The evening started like any other evening for Carlee Russell. But by 9:34 p.m., her life, and the lives of everyone who knew her, was thrust into chaos. That was the time Carlee dialed 911 from Interstate 459. Her voice was steady, but tinged with concern as she described something almost unimaginable. A toddler, alone, wandering near the highway. "I see a child walking on the side of the road," she told the dispatcher. The operator asked her for details. Carlee stayed calm, giving a description of the child, while cars rushed past her. For a moment, everything seemed controlled. Carlee was a young woman trying to help a child in what seemed like a heartbreaking situation. But then, minutes later, she made another call, this time to a family member. What happened next was chilling. In the middle of the call, Carlee let out a scream. And just like that, the line went silent. Her family, now frantic, immediately tried to call her back. But Carlee's phone was no longer reachable. Within moments, a sense of dread began to settle over everyone who knew her. When police arrived at the scene a short time later, they found Carlee's car pulled over on the shoulder of the highway. The engine was still running, her purse and phone inside, but there was no sign of Carlee or the child she'd reported. The scene felt frozen in time. Her belongings told a story of a young woman who had no intention of disappearing. So where was she? Investigators combed the area. Searchlights illuminated the brush along the highway, and K-9 units were brought in to help. But there was no trace of Carlee or the toddler she described. The questions began to pile up. Who was this child? Was Carlee abducted? Or had something else happened that no one could have predicted? The empty car on the side of the road became a symbol of fear and heartbreak for her family and community. Every moment she was missing added another layer of anguish. Imagine being her family, desperately trying to hold onto hope while fearing the worst. Imagine being Carlee herself, wherever she was, feeling trapped and powerless. How would you react if your loved one vanished in such a terrifying way? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in that moment? Could you have stayed calm enough to help? The hours after Carlee Russell's disappearance were filled with confusion and heartbreak. For her family, every passing moment was a test of endurance, fueled by one question: where was Carlee? Her loved ones sprang into action, mobilizing friends, neighbors, and even strangers to search for her. Volunteers scoured the highways, wooded areas, and neighborhoods, determined to find any trace of the young woman they knew and loved. As word spread, the local community rallied together, organizing search parties and creating flyers with Carlee's smiling face and the words, "Missing. Please help." By the end of the first day, the entire city of Hoover seemed to be on high alert. Fundraising efforts for a reward quickly gained traction, with over $63,000 raised to encourage anyone with information to come forward. This wasn't just a missing persons case. It had become a movement. Meanwhile, the media latched onto the story, amplifying it across the nation. News anchors recounted the chilling details: a young nursing student vanishing after stopping to help a child on a highway. Social media buzzed with theories and hashtags, as people from all over the country shared her photo and urged others to stay vigilant. But while the public rallied behind Carlee's family, tensions mounted for law enforcement. The Hoover Police Department, now working under a national spotlight, scrambled to follow every lead. For detectives, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Every second counted in the search for Carlee. As the hours turned into days, hope and fear began to blur together. Think about the weight of a community coming together for one person, a daughter, a friend, and neighbor. Think about the lengths you'd go to if it was someone you loved. Would you join the search? Would you donate or spread the word, hoping to bring them home? Let us know in the comments. How would you have helped in a situation like this? 49 hours after she vanished, without a trace, Carlee Russell returned. It was July 15, 2023, just after 10:30 p.m., when she appeared on the doorstep of her family home in Hoover, Alabama, barefoot and visibly shaken. Her family, who had been holding on to hope for her safe return, immediately rushed her inside. They were overjoyed, but as they embraced Carlee, they couldn't help but wonder, what had she been through? Where had she been? For 2 days, the nation had been gripped by her disappearance. Now, Carlee was home, but her reappearance raised more questions than answers. According to Carlee, her ordeal began the moment she stepped out of her car to check on the toddler she had reported to 911. She claimed that as she approached the child, a man emerged from the woods, grabbed her, and forced her into a vehicle. Carlee described her abductor as a man with orange hair and a bald spot. She alleged that he took her to a house, where a woman joined him in holding her captive. She said they fed her cheese crackers and photographed her, though she wasn't physically harmed. She also claimed that she managed to escape not once, but twice. The first time, she said, she was recaptured. But the second time, she fled successfully and found her way home. It was a harrowing story, one that sent shockwaves through her family and the community. But as investigators began piecing together the details, some elements of Carlee's account left them puzzled. Imagine the relief her family must have felt seeing her walk through the door, alive and safe. But imagine the questions that lingered in their minds, questions that soon everyone in the nation would be asking. If Carlee escaped, who were her captors? Where was this house she described? And why were there no signs of the child that had drawn her into danger in the first place? What would you have done if you were in Carlee's shoes? Could you have stayed strong enough to escape twice? As Carlee Russell's story began to circulate, her account of abduction raised many eyebrows. On the surface, it seemed like a terrifying ordeal, a young woman abducted while trying to help a child in distress. But as law enforcement dug deeper, the cracks in her story started to show. First, there was the toddler. Despite extensive searches, police found no evidence of a child walking along Interstate 459. No other drivers had reported seeing a toddler that night, and surveillance cameras from nearby areas showed nothing unusual. Then there were the witnesses. Investigators interviewed multiple people who drove along that stretch of highway. None of them saw anything out of the ordinary. No child, no abductor, no struggle. But the most damning evidence came from Carlee's own actions in the hours leading up to her disappearance. Police reviewed her internet search history, and what they found was both puzzling and alarming. In the days before she went missing, Carlee had searched for information on Amber Alerts, the movie Taken, a story about a fictional kidnapping, how to steal money from a cash register, and the cost of a one-way bus ticket from Birmingham to Nashville. Investigators also uncovered a surveillance video from the night of her disappearance. It showed Carlee at a local Target, purchasing snacks, a bathrobe, and other personal items. These purchases were later found in her car, untouched. None of this matched the narrative of a woman taken against her will. As these inconsistencies came to light, the story that once united a community began to divide it. People who had rallied behind Carlee were now questioning her account. What had truly happened that night on Interstate 459? Was this a carefully planned act, or could there be another explanation? One rooted in desperation, fear, or something we may never fully understand. What do you think about the evidence? Does it raise doubts, or is there still room for belief in her story? For days, Carlee Russell's disappearance was a story of hope and fear, a young woman's harrowing escape from danger, with a community rallying to support her. But less than 2 weeks after her dramatic return, everything changed. On July 24, 2023, Carlee, through her attorney, confessed that the entire story was a fabrication. In a carefully worded statement, her lawyer read, "There was no kidnapping on July 13th. My client did not see a toddler on the side of the road. Carlee Russell acted alone in her disappearance." It was a confession that stunned not only her family, but the entire nation. For the first time, the extraordinary effort to find Carlee, a massive search involving police, volunteers, and thousands of dollars in resources, was called into question. But why? That was the question everyone wanted answered. Why would a 25-year-old nursing student, with her whole life ahead of her, concoct such a story? Carlee's motivations remain a mystery. Was it a cry for help? A desperate need for attention? Or something more complex, something hidden even from herself? Her confession brought a wave of backlash. Many felt betrayed, especially those who had poured time, money, and hope into finding her. Community leaders expressed outrage, not just at Carlee's actions, but at the resources her false report had diverted away from real emergencies. For her family, the emotional toll was immense. The same people who had embraced them with love and support were now questioning their integrity and demanding accountability. This revelation left a community in shock and a nation reflecting on the consequences of false reports. How does one repair trust when it's been so deeply broken? If you had supported Carlee during those days, how would you feel hearing this confession? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think motivated her actions? Was it desperation or something more? The confession brought clarity to the mystery surrounding Carlee Russell's disappearance, but it also brought legal consequences. On July 28, 2023, the Hoover Police Department announced formal charges against Carlee for false reporting to law enforcement and falsely reporting an incident. These charges, though misdemeanors, carried significant weight, reflecting the impact her actions had on the community and the resources spent during the investigation. In March 2024, Carlee stood before a judge to face the consequences of her fabricated story. She pleaded guilty to both charges and was sentenced to 1 year of probation, 100 hours of community service, and restitution of nearly $18,000 to cover the costs of the search and investigation. This sentence aimed to balance accountability with a chance for rehabilitation. While some felt it was fair, others believed it fell short, especially given the emotional toll her actions had on the community. The case sparked heated debate across the nation. Many questioned whether the punishment fit the crime. For some, the sentence was too lenient, given the resources and trust lost. For others, it highlighted the need for compassion and understanding, raising questions about Carlee's mental health and the pressures she may have been under. The public was divided. Was she a young woman who made a terrible mistake, or someone who should face harsher consequences for the harm caused? This case forces us to confront difficult questions about accountability and forgiveness. What do you think? Did the sentence achieve justice, or should the consequences have been more severe? Carlee Russell's story didn't just impact her family or the community of Hoover, Alabama. It rippled across the nation, forcing us all to confront uncomfortable truths. False reports like Carlee's don't just mislead, they take resources away from real emergencies. Every officer searching for Carlee was one less responding to a child in danger, a missing loved one, or a crime in progress. For law enforcement and emergency responders, the strain is more than logistical, it's personal. These are people driven by the hope of saving lives, and when that trust is broken, it leaves a lasting scar. For the public, this case serves as a harsh reminder of the power of a single lie, how quickly communities can unite, but also how easily hope can turn to skepticism and compassion into anger. How many people will hesitate now to believe the next story of a person in peril? But this case also highlights deeper questions about our society. Carlee's actions were undeniably wrong, but what drove her to fabricate such an elaborate story? Was this a cry for help, an unspoken plea from a young woman struggling with something too big to face alone? Or was it something else entirely, something we may never understand? How do we balance justice with empathy, accountability with compassion? And when someone makes a mistake this monumental, how do we move forward together as a society? This case raises critical questions. How do we balance justice with empathy? How do we ensure our resources are used to protect those truly in need, without losing faith in each other? For every lesson learned here, one truth remains. Our actions have consequences, and our society is only as strong as the trust we build together. What do you think drove Carlee Russell to fabricate this story? Was it fear, desperation, or something else? Share your theories in the comments below. Your voice matters in these conversations. And don't forget to subscribe for more true crime stories that challenge what we think we know. Next week, we'll unravel a case even more perplexing, one that will leave you questioning everything you know about justice.